Okay, now that everyone has their food and presumably their mouth full, we will start. Julianne, will you lead us in the pledge?
Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you join me in the four-way test?
People?
For you who are not Rotarians, we have 4 guidelines that we try to move by. We don't always succeed, but we do try. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, is it beneficial to all concerned? I'm having one this morning. Welcome to Rotary.
You know, just right.
And welcome to our wonderful winter weather, finally. We have a few items of business. First, does anyone have any happy thoughts? None? Okay, we will move on. We're having a little bit of a crisis in the club. The older members all seem to be too busy to assume a leadership position. Our president-elect has had to withdraw. So we are searching for a president at this time, and for our business meeting in February, we will do our best to hold an all-members meeting, get everyone here, and discuss where the club is and where we're going. Yale has agreed to lead the membership committee, and Miranda has enthusiastically joined. So hopefully between the 2 charming ladies, we can bring in some more new members. Matt, what's going on down in your part of the world?
He always does that.
I work hard at it.
I know you do. I'm available for anything you guys need. So.
Okay.
Wow, that almost came out of nowhere.
What does the club need, everybody? Seriously.
No, seriously though.
Yeah.
Anything like you guys need, I'm willing to help.
That's one thing that we will be discussing in February. We've got several ideas, some new directions, possibly for the club. And we appreciate your willingness to jump in and participate. You and Miranda are doing more than most of the older members, so thank you both. Not a lot of news here. Our president-elect training will be February 5th, and then in early April we will have our district assembly. For you who are relatively new, the assembly is just a get-together, little training, a little fun, and a little bit of meeting people from other clubs. It will be at the Salt Lake College in Sandy. We go up in the morning, it starts at 9 and lets out at 1. And just a little bit about Rotary, about friendship and sharing. I will be going, definitely, and any who would like to go are most welcome. I will have specific dates and put them out on the email to everyone so that you're all aware. Miranda, do you have a specific email?
I gave it to
Lynn?
last week.
Okay, great. thing.
But I know Will's getting them,
Good.
but I didn't get the one that he got like yesterday or something, so maybe
Okay. Give it to me and I'll make sure it's in.
I'll write it for you.
All right, super.
And then I need you to change my email as well. Lana's got the email changed, but I don't think you have. Because when I get your messages, they come on my old email. So do you need me to write mine too? So you can update yours.
Okay, what is yours, Lana?
lh.hiskey@gmail.com.
Okay. Is there any business from the floor? We have a new director for the Chamber of Commerce, and we'll be inviting him to speak in the near future. Next week, we have the Vice President of Intermountain Healthcare coming to tell us about the services they offer, and basically to update us on what's going on.
7 years. It's going to be about
And with that, since it's a quiet meeting, Mike, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce our speaker.
Okay, thanks. Before the academic stash. So I think it's probably about 5 to 7 years now. So we can
Well, one of the nice things about living in Spanish Fork is we have a lot of people that live here that are willing to serve, and one of them is with us today. His name is Bruce Fallon. He's a licensed architect. Bruce has lived in Spanish Fork about 10 years, so he jumped right in. He's on the Planning Commission, which makes a lot of important decisions for our community. He's a native, according to his wife, of Oregon and California. He's a graduate of the University of Utah. He has a master's degree in architecture. He is already involved in service and scouting, I know up to his neck. He likes to coach soccer, both club soccer and city soccer. His kids are involved. What was interesting to me is that he's already been involved as an architect in the construction of the North Park Pavilion in Spanish Fork, as well as Rock Canyon Bank. I take it the remodel of Rock Canyon Bank, and Spanish Fork Fairgrounds. Does that include the new arena?
The buildings that tuck in around the area.
Yeah, that's great, that's great. And he's got all kinds of certifications that I can't pronounce them all, so we'll try. Bruce, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'd like to keep this as informal as possible, and if you have questions as I kind of go through my discussion with you, feel free to raise your hand or whatever. As Mike mentioned, we've been here in Spanish Fork almost 10 years, and it's one of those things that we just kind of decided to just jump in with as much as we could, and we've really enjoyed living here. I do kind of joke about living here a little bit, that I don't drive a truck, so I really don't fit in all that well, but that'll change hopefully one of these days, right? So about a year and a half ago or so, I serve with the American Institute of Architects. It's a group of architects. There's about 575 members here in the state of Utah, and with a group that covers mostly it's Utah County, but we call it the Central Utah section, and there's about 25 to 30 of us, so it's about the same size as your group of architects that practice and or live here in Utah County. When I was serving on their board, we organized a design charrette about a year and a half ago. Rich was at that, actually. We held that at the North Park Pavilion. And we looked at it. I guess I was on the Planning Commission by then. So I have a keen interest in the city and what we're doing in the city, and particularly with the million square feet of retail development coming to the north end of town that we're all excited about, but it also has a potential negative impact too. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can from a planning commission side, and Dave Anderson's been very proactive in some of that as well from the community development side from the city. And so it was, we as an AIA group decided to organize this design charrette to kind of maybe continue the conversation. About a year before that, Dave had connected with a class up at BYU who came down and did an inventory of downtown. They looked at parking, they looked at what uses were downtown. And maybe I should back up and say when we define downtown, we kind of define it as from First South to Fourth North. That's kind of the general area that we're talking about, and from First West to First East. That's kind of the confines of what we're discussing. So in this design charrette, we looked at two different things. We looked at, we pulled in local architects. There were business owners as well as members of the Chamber of Commerce that came. We talked about some of the issues and some of the challenges that are downtown. One of the big ones that we've talked about over and over again is just the complexity that downtown has between different interests of the city, the business owners, the landowners, of UDOT. There's a variety of different challenges and interests that kind of collide there in downtown Main Street. So we looked at some of those things. We looked at some facade improvement ideas. And so we, like I said, talked with architects, local architects, to kind of sketch some of those ideas. And then we also looked at the idea of, okay, what if you were to take a single block, and we took the block where Central Bank is located and said, what would you do with that block? And trying to create some kind of a vision maybe of what the future might look like in the next 10 to 20 years. There was nothing magical about picking that block. That was the block that we decided to choose. What grew out of that conversation was a discussion about potential opportunities that the city might be able to reach out for to get some outside help. As an architect, I work on drawings on a regular basis, and it's really easy for me as I'm working on a drawing to kind of have my blinders on, and it's nice to be able to step back and have somebody else look at it so that you kind of get stuck in some of the mud of the details. And so we thought, well, what are the opportunities? American Institute of Architects has a program called the Regional Urban Design Assistance Team, or RUDAT. We've had several of those done here in the state of Utah. Pleasant Grove was the most recent one that was done about 8 years ago. West Valley City, Salt Lake City, seems like there's one up north that has had a RUDAT performed. They have other programs, what they call the SDAT, which is a Sustainable Design Assistance Team. So we talked about that. And then there's another program by the American Planning Association, which is an association of planners similar to architects, but they focus on urban planning and those types of issues. And they have a program called the Community Planning Assistance Team, or CPAT is what we've called it. So you may hear that term if you haven't already. And so based on the understanding we had of these two different programs, we evaluated it. Along with the help of the AIA Utah has an urban design committee whose main focus and interest is urban design and helping communities throughout the state of Utah. They used to be called the Center City Committee, focused just on Salt Lake City, but they expanded their outreach and desire to the entire state. And so a committee was formed. Dave Anderson, myself, and then a gentleman named Soren Simonson, who's an urban planner. You may have heard his name during the elections. He ran for Congress at one point. And so the three of us started this committee. We had members of the local community as a part of that committee, and we, as well as members from the Urban Design Committee for AIA Utah to develop an application. And so we spent several months developing this application. The application is something that the APA provides you and says, answer these questions. It ended up being about a 230-page application by the time everything was all said and done. describing what the issues were and so forth. And so from that, we submitted for that. And towards the end of the summer, we were notified that Spanish Fork City was selected for this program. So we'll be the first CPAT here in the state of Utah, which we're pretty excited about having that opportunity. So let me explain a little bit about what that means. So they have a staff member from the American Planning Association out of Washington, D.C. assigned to these programs. You can go onto their website if you're interested to see the different programs that have been done throughout the United States and kind of what the results of those programs have provided. From the staff member, they then select a volunteer from someplace in the country to help be the team leader. The team leader that's been selected, her name is Deb Mehoff. She's out of Portland, Oregon, and is an urban planner up there. They made a visit back in early December. This visit was intended to begin the process of the CPAT program here in Spanish Fork. They spent about a day and a half here in the city interviewing local business owners. Maybe some of you got contacted, I don't know. But they spent time with city staff, with the political leaders that we have in the city to try and take what we wrote in the application form and to put a little more life to it, to make connections to what's going on. And so from that point on, what will happen is that now they're in the process of the next step. And the next step is creating a group of professionals from around the country who donate their time for a 4 to 5 day visit here to Spanish Fork City. These design professionals could be architects, they could be urban planners, landscape architects, economic development experts, they could be traffic planners, a variety of different things, just based on, again, our application and what we define in this application, as well as the findings that Deb and Jen from APA determined during their visit. And so they're in the process of doing that right now and identifying who those professionals that they can reach out to and create this design team. I shouldn't say design team, it's the assistance team. So then they're trying to schedule this. I think at this point we're looking sometime in early May for them to come out and do this visit. Through that visit, over those 4 or 5 days, they'll hold a series of community meetings where residents will be invited, local business owners, landowners hopefully will also come because they obviously play a key interest. I'm sure they'll meet with individuals from UDOT because they have such a keen interest and control on the downtown there in terms of the city, or in terms of the street. And so those kinds of visits will be done and interviews will be done, and those design professionals will take some time and develop some concepts and ideas that will help hopefully solve some of the issues. As we put this together, one of the interesting things that we found was there were a couple of reports done back in the early 80s for Spanish Fork City. One was a group of concerned citizens that came together as a beautification committee. Some of you may have remembered that, have been around when that happened. I think some of the finishes and the trees, the planters and all that kind of grew out of that part of it. And then there was another group from BYU that came down. I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly where they were from, what division of BYU they were there, but the interesting thing was that the conversations that we have been having over the last couple of years were no different than the conversations that were being held 30 years ago. And so one of the things that we were clear on in our application process is that, despite the fact that we have this 1 million square feet of retail development coming into the Spanish Fork City, the issues haven't changed. There's maybe a little more pressure now involved because we have all this retail development. But the issues and the concerns and the desires of downtown hasn't really changed. And what we really need is the next step. How do we get from where we are and what our concerns are and what we have to proceed forth with and what are the steps that need to be taken. And those steps could be things that the city can do, things that the local landowners and business owners can do. They may be things that they team together. I know some cities have some resources that they tie into where it's kind of a matching program to help business owners or building owners to be able to do facade improvements to the exterior of their building. Some people can only do so much, and it's nice to have that little extra help. And so those are the kind of resources that we're hoping for, that we'll be able to identify through this process. At the end of this 4 or 5 day visit, they'll have a final presentation where they will present their findings. They'll present kind of what we hope. Our intent is that we'll have a vision for the future of what we can do. And then these things that we need to do as a city, as a chamber, as even Rotary and such can do to work together to achieve that. There may be things regulatory-wise that the city can do to change that will help that. So there's a lot of different options and ideas. It's really wide open at this point. And so what we really could use is as many people involved in the process. Many of you, and as I talked to Mike, you've been on downtown Main Street for how long?
Well, 1967.
Since 1967, so before I was even born, Mike, so. But there's people in the city that have been around for a long time. They know the history, they know the things that have gone on and that have worked and haven't worked. We want the people that even don't think this is a good idea to be coming out and participating, because that's a valuable part of the process that I think that needs to happen. Yes, sir.
So did I understand, is the research on what you're looking at is just that whole downtown area?
Right. So what we asked of this,
Not reviewing the community as a whole as to what things are, what needs.
that certainly come into place. There's, one of the things in the application we talked about is some contextual discussions about how does the downtown connect to other parts of the city, and how does it, what's the role that the downtown plays within the city as a whole. So I think that's part of the conversation, certainly. But yeah, the specific study area, so to speak, is from that first south to fourth north, and from first west to first east. And I guess I see that there's a great impact as you go all the way up to the freeway and even on the north side of Main Street. There's really a whole system, a whole lifeline that covers that entire way. And I think that what we do here in this area that we call historic downtown will grow and impact and create something that's pretty amazing. Because there's still a lot, when you go up to where the Rain's office is, and there's still a lot of potential development, in that part of town on the north end of Main Street, and how that develops and how that impacts.
For example, there's a home that's just on the other side of where we're at. There's a home,
Two
there's
houses
two
up,
homes.
yeah.
And we had a businessman that wanted to purchase that property, tear it down, and do an office there. And we couldn't grant it because they wanted to use, the only way they could do it is using our back access to that property. And we just barely have room to park our cars and turn around, back out. So if there was traffic going there, it would just be a mess. And so those are the kind of things that, kind of concern a lot of us too, so.
Everyone always asks me, so is parking under the conversation? And the answer is absolutely. That is certainly a major element of this discussion. Maybe I could just read from the application what was described as the summary of the project. It's just a paragraph. So, Spanish Fork Main Street is similar to the downtowns of many small Utah communities, consisting of 5 city blocks along a state highway transportation corridor, and is surrounded by a traditional grid network used by the early Mormon pioneers. Many of the buildings date back to the late 1800s, yet this heritage has not retained the interest of the community or many of the downtown landowners. As the area has grown by more than 200% in the last 2 decades, which is really amazing. You think about that. Dave Anderson regularly talks about the fact that in the time that he's been here, the population of Spanish Fork City has doubled. And so, pretty incredible. So, as the area has grown by more than 200% in the last 2 decades, a neglected Main Street has faded from the community's radar displaced by large regional commercial development in other parts of the city. The success of Spanish Fork Main Street will always need a strong business community and supportive city leaders, but that is not enough. Unless the community develops and embraces unifying standards and a clear vision, it will become increasingly difficult to preserve what needs preserving, to change what needs changing, and point the city toward a sustainable future for Main Street. With the assistance of the CPAT program, the city seeks to build upon the existing historic foundation and create a realistic, achievable vision and identity that will lead to a vibrant, active, and sustainable downtown. A lot of words. But as an architect, I see things maybe a little differently than many. Bones that I see downtown are phenomenal. There's just some great bones, as I would call it. You know, the flesh is hurting a little bit in some places. Some places, you know, they've done some nice things to it, and I think there's just an activity level, an energy that's starting to be really move forward with downtown that I'm really excited about.
Is it because of all the new building up here that there's not as much people going downtown to make? If that makes sense, like because we're having all this stuff up here and people are busy, you know, is Main Street just becoming less popular or something like that, or? You
know, the interesting thing is if you look at Main Street in terms of its vacancies, it's actually a pretty low vacancy rate for the area. So I think there is a lot still going on. There's some things in the future that we see that could have a potential negative impact as well. And the way the city has grown has an interesting impact. You have an area of town where I live up on 11th East and Canyon Road, and near that area. Everything east of there, most people don't ever drive through downtown. You know, if they have someplace to go, you head over to Highway 6 and you hit the freeway and you're gone. And that's okay. I mean, that's just the way things have grown out and such. And so that's one of the reasons why we titled our application Discover Spanish Fork Main Street. We want people to discover it. One of the things that may grow out of this is programming, is what I would call it. Things like the Spanish Fork Main Street, the Halloween activity that pulls people down on Main Street. Well, the trick-or-treating is what I was thinking of. You know, it pulls people down, they go to various businesses and they go, oh goodness, look at that, you know. This little boutique is here, that's great, or Tabitha's Way, or whatever it may be. Provo City does a thing at Christmas time where they have kind of a Christmas decorations in their storefronts. But I would love to see something like that as another reason for people to come downtown and check out downtown. Certainly the changes in our transportation network have a big impact. And eventually there's going to be, you know, Center Street will have an exit eventually. People down in Salem and Woodland Hills and Elk Ridge will have less of a reason to drive up and down Main Street, so that's going to change some of the nature and feeling of it. So there's just so many factors. So that's kind of the reason why we felt like it was important to get a group of experts from maybe outside of Utah to get a fresh and new take on what's going on here in Spanish Fork. To get a fresh and new take on what's going on here in Spanish Fork.
So that meeting that the community can go to, is that going to go into like the city bill or something?
Yeah, there'll be lots of different things, ways to find out about it. It'll be hitting, you know, most of the social media networks will be we'll be broadcasting that. Channel 17 will cover a lot of things. There was an article in the Daily Herald about this program and the opportunity that it's presenting here about a month ago.
So getting forums on Facebook about people wanting a community center here and things like that, down in that area. Mm-hmm. Not up here by all these businesses, but down in Spanish, you know, down in that area to create that cohesiveness, you know, where we and theaters and things can use a building to commemorate, and it's downtown, right? That would be.
One of the things too that I want to kind of prime the pump a little bit, maybe in terms of the future of most cities. Successful cities that have seen a revitalization of their downtowns have most often has occurred when you put more people downtown. You have more residences downtown. Right now in Provo City, for example, I think the article I read the other day said that there's about 300 new residential units being constructed right now in downtown Provo, with another 1,000 that the city is aware of that's on the board. And Orem's in the same way. I mean, you look at this similar article talked about the development going on around the mall, and I think it was 1 million square feet of residential development. That's a lot of residential development to be put in that one section. But that's been the successful model as we've watched cities. So what has happened is you have these cities that were very successful from an urban perspective, and then people moved out to the suburbans, and I think it's been, some people like that, and that's great. I mean, I live in a suburban community and I love it. But the downtown to kind of revitalize it, become successful again, it has to come back to downtown. And so I think we're going to see that over the next 10 to 20 years here in Spanish Fork. It's not going to be on the same scale as downtown Salt Lake or Provo by any means. But I think in order to create some vitality and some life to downtown and make a reason for people to come down, you're going to see some more residential units constructed downtown.
When you talk about traffic, right now downtown traffic is maximum. Certain times of the day, you can't move around in the traffic. So if there are alternate routes to Woodland Hills or Salem, that would make a big difference with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It has a negative and positive opportunity.
Yeah, it bypasses all the businesses.
Yeah.
Bruce,
Yes, sir.
is there any attempt to attract high-end sit-down restaurant?
In the downtown, there hasn't been any discussion about that.
This town is not having,
Right.
and a good sit-down, relax, enjoy your meal restaurant, it'd be a great goal.
I know, all these fast foods, it's not really so many.
There's a lot of people that talk about, I hear that all the time. In fact, I've been giving the developers a hard time every time they come to Planning Commission to say, would you just publish a list of who's actually coming to the development up north, because I'm tired of people asking me, hey, I heard that so-and-so is coming, so. But, yes, ma'am.
By residential, are you talking about mixed use? Some of what we're seeing over in Riverwoods and over in American Fort, where they've got the apartments over the businesses? Is that what we're talking about?
I can see that, absolutely, yeah. The challenge I think that we have in Spanish Fork is our main street is really, I spent this last October, I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Santa Fe is actually smaller than Provo City, which is really interesting. But the sense of urbanness that they have in Santa Fe is because of that mixed-use component, and it's a much larger area. Whereas for Spanish Fork, we're kind of confined. When we make this, there's a distinct edge that occurs between the downtown core and then the single-family residences that flank it on either side. And so one of the things that we talked about is developing standards and concepts for making that transition so that we don't negatively impact. If there's an increase in density through mixed use type development, how do you do that appropriately that doesn't then negatively impact the single family residences that are adjacent?
Does mixed use ever work?
Does it ever work?
Yeah, because you look at Riverwoods, and it used to be good and nice, and now it just went to pots, and then the big investor.
I don't know that I would count Riverwoods as true urban mixed use, though. I mean, it's more of they took the mixed use concept and tried to apply it into a suburban location.
Right.
But in a downtown, it's been very.
They tried to do that too, like those big, I don't know what developer it was, but that big one out too.
State Street Norm.
That's actually coming back. They're gonna.
This doesn't seem like it would work at all, because you look at that, and yeah, especially the port. And like those are bigger cities in Spanish Fork, so who's that going to attract?
Yeah.
know.
But Orem had a lot of people that wanted to go in. The developer is the reason that that one failed, and
The
people
economy.
that were there could only buy
Timing was
with
off.
cash because it wasn't loanable.
Yeah.
So what are some other negative impacts that you guys are working with? Because when you say negative impacts, what does that mean?
I guess that's.
So, I mean, traveling, when you say negative impacts, like, what is that?
Well, I think we're talking about, some of the things that we've talked about is the condition, just the plain condition of downtown. The building, the condition of the buildings. One of the things that I think that we've talked about, the possibility of it being looked at is do buildings need to be evaluated from a sense of, are they worth saving, or do they need to be rehabbed? Do they need to be torn down? Some buildings have a useful life and can be, reused over and over again. I think Rock Canyon Bank is a good example. It was a very well-built building when it was done, and it's got good bones that allow it to stay strong. But there are some other buildings that you may not have that same thing. So we looked at some of that. I'm trying to let me look at my notes here of some of the other issues. Yeah, so the blighting of buildings, concern about that.
So like the Mi Rancherito, is that what it's called, Mi Ranchito? Building that has open window spaces that are, so that kind of thing that is detracting from it, is that what you're talking about? We're
Yep.
gonna clean that up, we're going to make changes to those?
Well, it's a matter of, this program isn't going to create the change, but it's hopefully going to create a pathway that can lead to those kinds of changes. It's not going to say, we're not going to go out and rebuild it that day or whatever, but look for opportunities and solutions to try and alleviate some of those types of things. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no.
Okay.
That restaurant in particular, say they don't have the money to be able to do the upstairs. That's where these funds will come in and help, right?
If they're available, yeah, absolutely. And I say if because I don't know. That's why we're bringing in experts from outside to say, here are sources of funding, Main Street USA, grant or something like that might be available that somebody knows about. I'm just making that up. But maybe there's some, financial grant money that's available out there. Maybe it's a CDBG grant that we just aren't aware of that's available. And so, I'm sure that some of the things that will be discussed is it valuable to create it as a historic district? I don't know. I don't know. There's going to be good and bad about doing something like that. Park City, I think, has dealt with that a little bit because their historic district has some limitations to what they can do now because of that designation. So, any other questions? More than anything, I really want to encourage your involvement as we go through this process. These are the kind of questions that will help inform those people that come to visit in the process of their understanding to be able to help us achieve. It's our city. It's what we want to do with it, and what we want it to become. And so we really encourage and look forward to the opportunity. So thanks for your time.
Is there anything else that needs to come before the group? Hearing none, I declare us adjourned.